What's up, everyone? The 2025 Supercross season is officially in full swing, and so far it definitely has not disappointed. There's been a lot of things going on, and there's a lot to talk about, but today what we're going to talk about is some of the injury updates from San Diego, and then we also have some updates on a couple of new riders that could be joining the field next weekend at Anaheim 2. It looks like we're going to have Enzo Lopes coming back. If you guys have been following this channel for a while, you know that we've tried to cover his journey as best as we can. He's definitely been on a unique path, and it'll be interesting to see how he can do coming back to the States. And then it also sounds like we will finally get to see Drew Adams coming to the West Coast. A lot of you guys thought that he probably should have been there at Anaheim 1, or at least last weekend in San Diego. So there's a lot to talk about. Let's get into it. Alright, the first thing I want to talk about is the whole Jo Shimoda incident where he ran into the pit board and unfortunately ended up breaking his hand. That was absolutely unfortunate and pretty avoidable, so really frustrating. I cannot imagine how Joe feels. My personal reaction when I first saw that was, uh-oh, that looked like a Yamaha pit board. And I definitely didn't want to jump to any conclusions, but my mind definitely went towards, this could look really bad for Star Yamaha if what I think just happened. Now, fortunately, Joe was able to gut it out and put together a somewhat good ride. I have no idea how, because if you look at the picture of his hand, it darn near looks like his pinky's about to fall off. I'll go ahead and throw that up real quick, but if you guys aren't good with that kind of stuff, just, warning. So thankfully, it wasn't worse for Joe. Definitely not an ideal situation, but at least he still has all of his digits and everything. Now, it sounds like, obviously, I was not the only one thinking that about Star Yamaha, and some people did call out Hayden Deegan's mechanic, and he's never been one to shy away from controversy or just telling us exactly what's going on. So he pretty much put it out there saying that Cody Schock's mechanic is the one who hit Joe with his pit board. I'm sure he definitely wasn't trying to do that. I'm sure he feels terrible. So I don't want to drag his name through the mud or anything, but it was interesting to see that that's what happened. So like I had mentioned earlier, it seemed like this incident in general was pretty avoidable. Obviously, Joe was kind of in the racing line, which was right up against the mechanics area. All that really had to happen for this not to happen would have been for the pit board to not be in his way. Definitely something that could have happened, but then the other question seems to get sparked, which for whatever reason, there always seems to be something that sparks this conversation, and that is in-ear communications with the riders. The people are generally divided and have different stances on communication with the riders directly, and there are a lot of different ideas and propositions of exactly how you would do that. I've made videos specifically talking about it and how I would do it, but it seems like generally speaking, people are becoming more and more for the idea.
They need to get communication in Supercross for sure.
I'm definitely curious to see if and when we'll see that implemented. Obviously, I don't think it'll be this season, but I feel like at this point, it's probably coming. Even Ricky Carmichael specifically called for it on his podcast with Villapoto and said, it's time, we got to do it. Why are we still running pit boards?
The reason why don't we have comms, dude? Get out of town, man. It's time.
Yeah.
Not only would that have saved something like Joe's finger incident from happening, but also in that Avery Long incident where we had the red flag in the LCQ, where we saw the guys still racing up to the finish line, which was not that far from where he went down. They basically did like an extra half lap with the red flag out. It ultimately didn't affect anything. It's not like they were putting anyone in danger, but it would have been a lot more avoidable if they would have just said in their ears, like, hey, red flag, shut it down. Those guys would have stopped racing immediately. So potentially lots of benefits to in-ear comms. But anyways, moving on to the next subject. Unfortunately, we saw Ty Masterpool also go down in the main event. So he definitely surpassed my expectations by a little bit as far as his Supercross debut on that team. He got off to a pretty good start, qualifying 8th, and then finished 4th in his heat race. So I was pretty impressed with that. Definitely not too shabby. Not that he's not a good rider, but we just haven't seen him really do that on Supercross yet. Unfortunately, it does seem like the pro circuit curse is still in full effect because we can't even keep these guys healthy for one race. First, we saw Levi Kitchen get sick and have to switch sides or switch coasts. And now we see Ty Masterpool going out injured after one round. If you guys haven't heard, it sounds like he did break his hand. We haven't really seen anything official from the team or Ty, but that's the word on the street right now. This was kind of a worst case scenario in my mind as far as Thai racing Supercross. We all know how capable he is in motocross. We saw him beat Hayden Deegan straight up last year in motocross and take home an overall win, which was really cool to see. And we also saw him go head to head at Redbud, which was also a lot of fun to see. And really, we just wanted to see him get through Supercross, build some momentum, stack some SMX points, and then come out ripping for motocross. That's definitely still in the cards with it being early in the season and hopefully just a minor hand injury. We don't have anything confirmed other than he was wrapped up and definitely out. Obviously, we did not see him finish the main event after his crash. And that was a pretty hard landing that he took. I was actually concerned about his neck and jawline as well. So going to be interesting to see what the official release is once we get that from him or his team. But this does bring up an interesting opportunity with Drew Adams. A lot of people felt like we should have seen him on the West Coast from the beginning, especially with Levi switching coasts at the last second. But with everyone healthy, they had a 5-rider team, 3 on the East, 2 on the West. And it sounds like with the new bike coming out, they were limited on supplies and things like that. So they could really only support a 5-rider team. But with Thai Masterpool being out for the foreseeable future, and them probably needing at least 2 riders on a coast for contractual reasons, I think it's pretty likely we'll see Drew Adams out at Anaheim number 2, so gonna have to keep an eye out for that. I'm pretty sure by the time this video is out or shortly after, we'll probably be hearing something. There's a lot of young talent in the West Coast right now. I mean, we're seeing Cole Davies absolutely shredding as a rookie, and then Julian Beaumer, Hayden Deegan also riding very well. And we've seen Drew Adams winning a lot of his SMX Next or Supercross Futures, whatever you want to call it. So definitely someone that could come in swinging, and it'll be interesting to see exactly how that shakes out. Next, I just want to briefly touch on Avery Long, the rider that went down in that LCQ and caused the red flag restart. We did talk about that briefly earlier on, so if you guys didn't see it, I'm sure most of you did by now. Avery ended up coming up just short on one of the jumps, and that kind of bucked him forward, going off the next lip. And unfortunately, he ended up going over the bars and then getting tagged by his bike. Definitely a scary crash, and they did end up red flagging it. Sounds like he was unconscious on the track, and that's probably what caused the red flag. Thankfully, he is doing well right now. He did suffer a concussion, and he also bruised some ribs. So definitely it sucks to see that, but it's also glad to see that he's not worse off. Definitely something that could have been pretty scary with the way his head hit the ground and the bike came back around on top of him. You never like to see that, so it's good to see that he's at least up and walking and things like that. And then the last thing I want to talk about is Enzo Lopes and the fact that he's joining the BarX Yamaha team. So kind of weird the way this all worked out. Having Enzo join the team 2 rounds in is definitely not something that's normal per se. We saw Enzo really have that breakout year on Club MX Yamaha, and I think it was in 2023. And then he got that Star Yamaha deal and he underwent that arm pump surgery. And it sounds like it absolutely ruined his nerves. And then he's been dealing with that ever since. He wasn't even really able to ride for the longest time. He couldn't feel his hands and things like that. I don't want to get too into all of that. We did put specific videos on that earlier on last year, and it was quite the story. He ended up going back to Brazil, and things were just kind of weird for him. He did end up racing World Supercross, where he finished 4th overall in the championship. So we have seen him come back and race Supercross. But if you guys don't know, the World Supercross main events are a lot shorter than the 15-minute plus 1 main events that we have here in the States. And generally speaking, nerve issues are pretty weird to deal with. Obviously, we saw it pretty much end Adam Cianciarulo's career in an indirect way. He fought it for as long as he could, but for the most part, that's what really ended up causing him to retire from the sport. Hopefully, Enzo's been a little bit more fortunate. It's hard to say right now as he hasn't really talked about it publicly in the last few months. But either way, he's going to be racing Anaheim 2 for BarX Yamaha, so definitely interesting to see that. I would have to speculate that that's probably because Derek Drake is basically out with Lyme disease right now. Thankfully, he did find out what his issue is, but unfortunately, that's going to keep him from racing for the foreseeable future. So I would have to think that Enzo is kind of a fill-in for him right now. It feels like this is probably Enzo's last chance to really come to the States and re-prove himself that he can still do it and try to secure a ride for the foreseeable future to be able to stay here in the States. And if not, his dream of being a Supercross racer in the States is probably over. So definitely a unique situation. We've seen him burn some bridges with obviously Club MX by leaving that team to go to Star Yamaha. And then he kind of floundered his opportunity at Star Yamaha by just not being able to race. Not particularly his fault, obviously, with the arm pump surgery thing. I'm not sure exactly what all went into that. It seemed like it was generally the thing that you were supposed to do and kind of expected to do. Hard to say, all the ins and outs of exactly what went down on that. But either way, as a result of that surgery, he lost a lot of feeling in his hands and his arms. The last time I heard him talk about it, he did obviously say that it's gotten a little bit better, but for the most part, he still really struggles with being able to have feeling that he needs to be able to ride. So definitely a unique scenario there and not an ideal situation. But either way, like I said, he will be racing for BarX Yamaha this weekend, so keep your eye out for him as well. I'm curious what you guys think as far as the in-ear comms that I was talking about earlier. Let me know what your opinion is down in the comments below, if it's something that you think would be helpful and if you would like to see it. But that's going to go ahead and do it for everything I want to talk about in this video. Thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already. It really means a lot. And I will see you in the next video.